Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and today is another episode, a live episode of the Sporting Logically podcast. And this week, I have Legend of Winning here with me to talk about a handful of things. Obviously, the Zion Williamson injury is a thing that we're going to start with from last night. But Lo, how are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for having me on. Shout out to everybody on the live stream and the chat and stuff like that, and everybody else who's listening. Get into it.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to start talking about something that I actually just put a video out on. If you're watching this live, I just put it out less than half an hour ago, talking about obviously the fact that Zion Williamson did suffer an injury as he busted out of his shoe last night against UNC. It was unfortunate on a number of levels. First of all, it would have been great to see him play in such a big rivalry game, and it's just unfortunate how he got hurt. I know this has happened before. Like I think Manu Ginobili busted through his shoe one time. So it's just kind of a freak incident, but it's kind of brought up this whole other discussion, this other conversation about Zion Williamson specifically and elite college athletes in general. So I just kind of want to start that conversation and just talk about your opinions on whether he should have even been in college in the first place, just kind of the one and done rule. And I'm actually going to begin with someone that just commented on the video that I put out, the Zion video, and I just want to kind of hear your thoughts. So this guy says, some other things first, but he gets on to the point about basically big-time high school athletes going to the NBA straight out of high school. He said, yes, the LeBrons and Kobe's of the world had a good head on their shoulders by the time they left high school and were able to get their shit together. But then there were also tons of high school kids who were still stupid and basically blew their careers away. Most of the high school prospects self-destructed, got themselves into problems, or just couldn't handle the pressure of going from playing against kids and then the next year against Shaq, LeBron, and Garnett. As much hype as we have for these players to come into the league, truth is the one and done rule was put in place to protect the younger players. It's like forcing them to put one foot in and test the water before jumping into the pool. It's just one more year that they have to wait. It's not such a big deal. And this is one thing that continually irritates me about the one and done rule is this idea that people have that the NCAA and the NBA are so unselfish that they put the rule in place to protect players. That's not the case at all. Obviously, for the good of the league, they want players to come in well prepared for the NBA, but it's not to prevent them from flaming out their careers. It's a bargaining chip. It's a way for the NBA and the NCAA to have a good relationship, for the NCAA to continue to make money off of these players and not really have to pay them or compensate them in any other way, and to make the case that the NBA and NCAA are just, their hearts go out so much to these young players that they want to protect them and prevent their careers from flaming out. To me, is just one of the more irritating notions of the one and done rule and why we should keep it into place. In my opinion, it shouldn't be in place. What are your thoughts on that guy's comment, the one and done rule in general, and whether you actually think that the implication of the one and done rule is to protect young players?
So because my whole understanding of the one and done rule, it's not really a NCAA rule, it's an NBA rule, right? So I think people kind of. And I think the frustration when it comes to the NCAA is the lack of payment more so than like them actually having to go to play collegially. But I don't necessarily think that. I think people focus their energy in the wrong direction when it comes to this conversation to begin with, and it really should be focused on the NBA. In regards to like young players entering the NBA and them potentially not being prepared, that argument will be a little bit more valid if players are spending like 2 or 3 years in college. That's not happening anymore. Regardless of what's happening, it's going to be 1 year. And even that 1 year, they're not focused enough, nor you're not going to really see a massive amount of development that they couldn't obtain in the NBA anyway. So if the argument is, well, they need to go to college just because of development reasons, both mentally and physically, that really is not going to happen at all. And granted, I do believe that players like Zion, Kobe, and LeBron are kind of like outliers in a general sense, and everyone really isn't truly ready to make that jump from high school to the pros. I think there's a lot of players who aren't really that ready to make the jump from a 1 year of college to the pros anyway, but they're still able to just grow in the NBA. So if that's just the case, then just let them jump from high school straight to the league anyway. I don't understand the purpose of college to me. To me, it's just kind of foolishness. But I will give I'll give him credit when it happens, but I'll give Adam Silver the idea of kind of developing the G League and making that another option as well, because I think that should really be the purpose of the G League. The G League should be a league in which you can go from high school to the G League, and if in the middle of this season, if you're playing and you're performing up par, then you could, be selected from the G League and go from there. You don't necessarily have to go through a traditional route, because some players, potentially like a Zion, are great enough to they should be able to just avoid the draft in its totality, and they should be able to just kind of go their route, or even if not avoid the draft, should still have another route to the NBA besides, the playing 1 year of college. It's not really a year. It's like 6 months. Like it's I don't know. The whole thing is kind of just weird.
Right. That's one thing. I'm glad you brought up the G League, because that's something I've talked about in the past. Is just the league is it's a lot better equipped now to deal with guys that are 18 and 19 coming into the league. It's not perfect. It's not that the G League is going to save all these guys if they do enter the league too soon. But I'm more in the camp of, if a guy wants to declare for the NBA draft, just let him. Like, it's his mistake if he screws it up and doesn't develop the way that he should, doesn't focus the way that he should. And like you said, that 6 months in Chapel Hill or in Durham is not really going to help prepare them that much more for the NBA. I mean, it's not a full year. Like you said, they're playing there, they're training there, and then they're going to train for the NBA if they're truly a one and done player. So how is that 6-7 month period supposed to be so transformative that these guys are so much better equipped for the league when they're 19 as opposed to 18 and a half? Like, I don't understand how it is supposed to be this magic that happens when you go to a college campus. Now, I understand there's more responsibilities involved depending on what your high school situation was. If you're going to school and away from home, there's more responsibilities involved there, and maybe that helps you grow as a person. And I could kind of see that argument, but I'm with you. It doesn't really benefit the players at any point, and it's just something that we've always done, or at least we've done since the one and done rule has come into effect. So why would any of these players, these elite players at least, go to college? I understand if you're not a one and done, quote unquote, caliber player, I understand the point of college. But for guys like Zion, why can't they just have the opportunity to go straight to the league? And if you want to force guys to stay in college for 2 or 3 years once they make the decision to go, I mean, I guess that makes sense from the NCAA's standpoint, because they want to keep their own players. And from the league standpoint, if they want to have proper development over 2 or 3 years, then that makes sense. But I'm with you. This 1 year, this 6 month period, it's not some magical transformative time span that's going to turn someone from being not ready to the league for going to the league to suddenly becoming ready.
And on top of that, I mean, if we're going to be like really, really serious, I mean, who's really going to be prepared to go from, like, at most, or maybe, I mean, there's some kids out there who are sons of famous basketball players, but majority of the players who enter the NBA come from probably a background of a parent or maybe two that's somewhere around middle income, sometimes low income as well. It doesn't matter if you spend a year or 2 or 3 years in college. No one's not going to be prepared to go from a middle to low income situation into making millions upon millions of dollars within like a 6 to 8 month period, and then prepared to play at an elite level, or at least play against elite level players, who many of which are probably like 5 to 7 years older than you. So like that just doesn't happen. Like no one is prepared for that until it happens. And most players, I mean, again, we're removing the Kobe's and not Kobe because it took him a while, but removing players like Shaq and LeBron, who entered the NBA and had immediate impact. Like most players in the NBA, even some of the greatest of all time, it takes them just years to adapt. So it's going to take years regardless of what's going to happen. So why are we not, why not just put them in the league regardless? The argument for why they have to go to college, to me, isn't a sound one. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
It's like, we want to prepare these guys for the NBA. We want to make sure that they're ready when they get there, but we're going to put them in a completely different situation from the NBA to prepare them to get there. That, to me, doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, back, before the one and done rule, it was more difficult to develop high school to pro players because there weren't as many opportunities like the G League to get these guys significant run. Like, if you weren't good enough, if you weren't, Garnett or Kobe or any of those other guys, if you weren't one of those guys that could get run and play 25 minutes a game from the jump, then you were just sitting there and working out and practicing with the team and getting a couple of minutes a game. And there wasn't really a ton of development happening. But at least now, if let's say a guy declares straight out of high school, things don't go well. He can still play in the G League. He can still be around the team. He can be on a two-way contract, whatever it is. There's so many different avenues. And those different things that they've come up with are starting to make me think that this is a rule that is eventually going to go away. But it's like you said, it's not any kind of magical solution to have these guys go to college. If they want to, that's fine. But I just think that they should have the option. And I don't understand this mindset of the league and the NCAA. As you said, it's an NBA rule, not an NCAA rule. I don't understand the mindset of we need to save these guys from themselves. If they want to go to the NBA, they should be able to go. If they think they're ready, then that should be a decision that they should be able to live with. Because like you said, they're going a lot of the times from middle to low income families to making millions of dollars. None of these guys are making millions of dollars before they get to the league playing basketball. So that's going to be an adjustment no matter what, as you said. And from a basketball perspective, there are ways to make that adjustment now in the league that weren't there 20 years ago.
Exactly.
So I think we're kind of on the same page. And the other argument that I'll talk about very, very briefly is just the money thing. And this was kind of the conversation before Zion got hurt. Ticket prices for a college basketball game were soaring to near like Super Bowl level ticket prices. It was insane how much tickets were going for this game. And even compared to previous years, it's obviously a big rivalry game, but Zion being there obviously boosted the ticket prices a lot. And he's getting compensated through his 1 year at Duke and equipment and meal plan and all that stuff. But he's obviously providing a lot more value to the university than that. And the conversation comes up, should we pay them? I always think that's kind of a slippery slope to get into, because then you probably have to hire an agent if the salaries are going to be different. But if the salaries aren't going to be different, then, how do you define one player's value compared to another? So for me personally, the solution would just be let them make money off of their name and their likeness. If the local car dealership in Durham wants to have Zion Williamson in their commercial, let him. Like that way, he is a valuable asset to that car dealership or to whoever. If it wants to be a national campaign, that's fine. And so he can make money off of that. But the kicker for the North Carolina A&T football team that doesn't provide that much value to them outside of his scholarship, then nobody's going to want him to run an ad for them. So he's not going to be compensated any further than he already is. So just let him make money off their name, off their likeness. And then that way we could have an NCAA college basketball game too for Xbox or PS4. I'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah. Me and you are on the same page with a lot of these ideologies. To me, it's just like so un-American to have somebody work and do something like put themselves. I mean, because at the end of the day, regardless, I mean, it's not football to an extent to where your body is literally on the line every single possession, but to just have somebody work and then believing that their compensation is, again, like this 6 to 8 month period of college that no one, including the staff and faculty, are taking serious for these players. To think that that's justifying the means to not paying players, I guess that's your argument. And I laugh when people sit there and say they're giving them like meal plans and stuff like that. Like the food in college is just trash anyway, so nobody doesn't really care about that. And then and then on top of that, the thing that's just like a little bit overboard to me is like what you said. Like if you want to justify like you're getting a free education, that's fine. But when we step to the point where I can't like go off of campus and make my own money based off of my own likeness, like my likeness, not the school's likeness, not anything that has anything to do with is interacting with the school. I cannot just go off of my own name and make money based off of that. That's where things kind of get trickled down to where I think that part is just ridiculous.
Right.
But again, if you want to just restrict it to you can't make money because, you play basketball because we give you a scholarship in XYZ, yada, yada, yada. I understand that point to an extent. But like you said, the fact that he can't just like go off campus, shoot a commercial and make money based off of that, to me is a bit excessive.
Right. It's not like the fact that Zion is on Duke's basketball team is the reason that he's marketable. If college basketball didn't exist, Zion Williamson would still be a marketable commodity. And in my opinion, I said this in the video I just put out, if all of the structures of everything didn't exist, he's probably one of the 25 or 30 most valuable basketball players on the planet right now, and he's like 19, and he's not even playing in the NBA if all the other structures were taken away. But the other way that I would explain it is if, you or I'm not in college anymore, but if you or I were in college right now and we're playing for a collegiate basketball team or football team or any other sport, I guess. And we wanted to make money off of YouTube and make merch. I guess we wouldn't be allowed to do that. And by extension, let's just say that I received a full, I'm not a good writer, but let's just say I received a full academic scholarship to wherever as an English student. I'm some outstanding English student, and I decide I want to write a book and make money off of it. I would be able to do that. So why is that different for someone that's on a collegiate basketball team? It's because of the NCAA.
Agreed. I mean, because I was going to use the same example. If someone is brought there for, or maybe just like being the writer for the local newspaper or the school's newspaper, and the fact that they can't transition that from writing for a blog for internet or writing just for another local newspaper, they can do that. They can make money off of that. So why can't? Again, I don't know. It's like it's your own likeness. Like Zion is Zion. That has little to do with Duke, and the only reason why it has anything to do with Duke is because of the scholarship that he signed or he's receiving, and even that is something that is going to be pointless in the next 6 to 8 months anyway. So that doesn't really matter. Probably let me take that back. That probably won't mean anything if it comes back that Zion may not play for the remainder of the season. So like everything about Duke will become irrelevant in like 4 months or possibly 2 weeks. So the fact that he can't just make, money based off his name is a bit ridiculous. However, I live in the realm of reality, and I mean, Zion is getting paid. I'm not in a huge uproar. I know, I know some money is being laundered. So I mean, I'm not no huge uproar.
Right. It's that is kind of always the interesting thing is like if this guy, if he just said screw it and didn't go to college, like not even the Emmanuel Mudiay thing where you go overseas, if he was just like, nah, I'm just going to work out. I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to work out for a full year. That's going to be my one and done rule. And I'm just going to prepare myself for the league. I mean, he'd be making a ton of money right now. If Duke was out of the equation, if the NCAA was out of the equation, he'd still be making a ton of money right now on whatever endorsements. And that's partly because he is just such a viral internet phenomenon, right? Like it's not normal for every single prep to pro athlete to be that way. Like if Michael Porter Jr. sat out his entire freshman season, just worked out, he would still be making some money, but not on Zion levels. Now about college players getting paid under the table, you could try and, like you said, live out of the realm of reality and make the case that programs like Duke and Kentucky don't need to pay their players because they will get paid in 8 months after they sign. But I am on the same page with you. It's probably happening anyway. But like you said, we're pretty much on the same page here. It's pretty ridiculous. And hopefully, in my opinion, the one and done rule goes away. They'll probably, when they do get rid of it, replace it with some other stupid rule that'll continue to reward the NCAA and allow them to profit off of these kids for free. But hopefully this is something that will at least spark a conversation that people can start trying to come up with solutions for this. And like I said, my big goal would be just let them make money off their likenesses, let them make money off of their name, allow EA Sports to make another NCAA basketball game, and that'll be a big plus for me. And just the only negative I see with that potentially is like if Zion wants to film a commercial, does he need to have an agent to like negotiate the deal? Is he going to be able to negotiate it himself? There's some shady things start to come in there because agents are already a big issue in college sports anyway. But like I said, I think we're on the same page there. We're going to move on to the actual NBA here as games resume post All-Star break this evening. And as a Laker fan yourself, there's been, a bit of a roller coaster for the last couple of weeks. I see opinions from Lakers fans on Twitter all the time. Just it's a roller coaster, not only in what's going to happen with this team. Are we not going to get AD? What's going on with LeBron? When's he coming back? He finally came back. How are we playing when we come back? How far we are out of the playoffs, all that. But also just the opinion on the players themselves. I feel like on a weekly basis almost change, and people are really high on one player and then a week later they hate him. And that just could be a result of just a crazy season and how that plays on your emotions and being so, polarizing as a team in general. And I think I phrased this to you the same way last time you were on. If not, I apologize. But panic meter on the Lakers potentially missing the playoffs, 1 to 10, 1 being not concerned, 10 being we're missing the playoffs no matter what.
Okay, I think the last time we were on a podcast, it was before LeBron came back.
Correct, because I was guessing on when he might come back. Yes, he hadn't come back.
So at that point, I was very optimistic because the set of games that we had leading up into the All-Star break, there were some easier ones, and then there were some difficult ones. So I was going to be able to allow myself to kind of gauge how impactful LeBron was going to be. And unfortunately, the Lakers lost to Indiana without Oladipo, then to the Atlanta Hawks, and then couldn't even be competitive against the 76ers. With that in mind, and only being 25 games left, some of the games, I think 2 against Milwaukee, 1 against Toronto at Toronto, 1 against OKC and the Golden State Warriors. It kind of like you get to a point where it's like, man, it may not even be enough games anyway. Like you're just at a point where not only are they the 10th seed, but they have a losing record. The team that is ahead of them, Sacramento Kings, which more likely will be the team that they'll be fighting against to get the 8th seed. The Lakers have to face them again at least once more, I believe, maybe twice. And then you kind of look at their schedule after this 4-game stretch from the Sacramento Kings. They have an easier schedule. And then you kind of just, I mean, it gets to the point where it's like, man, this could legit happen. Like this is not like some I'm playing hypothetical. This may be like we're facing reality. So because of that, I'm almost at a point where it's like a 6 almost to a 7, to where it's like, yeah, we might not, like I'm at that point of the panic meter where like this is becoming more and more reality as time continues to progress. And all it would, I mean, and it's also at a point where we can't even drop any more games. Like we can't play around with anything else. And so to kind of get to the point where we have to win all of the games that we're supposed to, potentially steal a couple of games just to kind of make up for the games that we're more likely going to lose just because we're facing better teams. And then also take into consideration that the Kings would have to lose as well. I don't know. It's really, I'm at 7. That's where I'm at in the panic meter. 7.
I was very much on the same page as you. The last time we talked, wasn't that concerned. Was a big proponent of the fact that when Bron comes back, everything's gonna be fine, because before he got hurt, they were like the 4th or 5th seed. Like they were playing, it seemed like they'd figured it out, and then the injury just came in a really bad time. And it took a long time for him to come back. And yeah, I think we're very much in the realm of possibility that this might actually happen. Now, I am still holding out hope because I'm not a Lakers fan, but I would love for them to be in the playoffs. And more realistically, I'd love for them to be the 7 instead of the 8, so that they can play someone other than the Warriors in the first round and potentially make it into the second round and see what they can do from there. But like you said, it's one of those things where they're 3 games back of the Clippers, who are 8. They're 2 games back of the Kings, who are 9. And the Jazz and Spurs are both 4 games up on them at 6 and 7. I think most people are assuming that it's a race for one spot. I don't think the Spurs or Jazz, just as a team, just the way those teams are, barring injury, I don't think that they're going to slip late in the season and drop out. And you brought up the Atlanta game, and that was kind of the first time. Like Bron was back. It seemed like a game that there's no way they're going to lose. And that was the game that I watched, and I was like, I don't think these guys really think that this is going to happen. Like, meaning like it looked like they were almost defeated after that game. Like, wow, we might actually miss the playoffs. Like you can't lose those games. The Hawks, we're going to talk about them later. They're not awful. Like they're not all-time tanking level awful, especially since John Collins has come back. They've actually been pretty good. But you can't lose those games. Like you can't lose to the Hawks when you're in the West and you're trying to make the playoffs. And I saw on Twitter yesterday, the day before, I think the preseason over-under for the Lakers in terms of wins was like 48.5. And at the time, I don't remember if I put this in the video or not, but at the time I was like, man, I know it's in the West, but that seems kind of low. I mean, I definitely thought they were going to win 50 games and end up as like the 3 or the 4 or the 5 seed. But now they have to go like 21-4 the rest of the way just to break that over under. And that would be, 49 wins. So I would be concerned if I was you. Like I said, I'm not as invested as you are in them making the playoffs, because I'm obviously not a Laker fan, but I would think it would be extremely weird for the playoffs to not feature LeBron James, even in the Western Conference. And the only thing that I would still hold out hope for is just, and obviously there was the report, I think it was earlier today or yesterday, that Bron has officially now invoked playoff intensity, or however he phrased it. He's going hard in the paint the rest of the season to try and make the playoffs.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah,
that's like the most irritating thing I've ever heard anyone say.
Like, I've been chilling, but hold on. Let's really try to win now. Let's really try and do this.
Why are you like, that doesn't make any, that's so irritating to hear someone say throughout the season, in which, and I know you've made this argument, and many people made this argument as well. Like before LeBron was hurt, they were the 3rd or 4th seed or whatever, right? but the gap between the 4th seed at the time and the 8th seed was a margin of like a game and a half.
It might as well have been the 7. It's the equivalent of
exactly. The same people make the same argument for like last year for Portland, how like Portland, they had the 3rd seed. It's like the gap between the 3rd and the 8th seed.
They were a week away from being out of the playoffs entirely.
Exactly. So like it's an argument, and people, they love to simplify things as much as possible. But the Lakers were, in my opinion, and to a degree, they were figuring things out. But the Lakers were never at a point at any point of the season where LeBron could confidently state, I'm just going to chill out for like these next couple of games. And quite frankly, if there were going to be a stretch in which he could chill out, it was during the stretch of games he missed, because that was the weakest stretch, the weakest part of the schedule for the Lakers. But to say like in the beginning and in the second part of the season where we were passing the halfway mark, LeBron was like coasting, is ridiculous, especially when you're in the Western Conference, where it's very clear for anybody who thought that, oh, no, LeBron's going to dominate the West. It's extremely clear that seeding is way more important in the West than it is in the East. And for somebody to just casually say, well, I really wasn't trying all that hard earlier in the season. Now in these last 25 games, I'm now going to start trying. That's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life, especially when you came back from the injury, you were already in a very bad situation, and then faced some teams that you should have beaten, but you still didn't beat them. Right. And then to think that I'm going to come back, like it's almost like a level of arrogance that like, right. Oh yeah, I'm about to come back and really start trying. And it's like, all right, fine. And that's all. That's the only thing I know as a LeBron, because people call me a LeBron hater, but as a Laker fan, I am so torn, because there's a level of, and I'm also kind of caught up in this as well. There's a level of misconception of LeBron's career that needs to just be exposed. So from moving on forward, especially since he's with the Lakers, we can have a real talk about what this Laker team needs to do. And so I'm almost at a point where if it takes us to where the Lakers don't make the playoffs or they make the 8th seed, just so we can have a thorough understanding of LeBron is not going to be good enough moving forward. Like, you're going to need way more talent than what many people are expecting, especially when entering the season. Like you stated, some people, including myself, I was like, man, it might be a 50-win team. Like I was even trying to convince myself with that as well. And then some people were going even further, saying 55 wins. And some people were saying, and I remember very vividly in the second, I think it was like a second or third week, there were plenty of people on TV saying, especially like Chris Broussard, who was saying, oh yeah, this could be like, the second best team in the West. I'm like, oh wow, y'all are just going way, the expectations have now started to overflow. And the only reason why people say that is because of LeBron. If you count the games in which LeBron has played, they're only on a 46-win pace. So it's not as if like, even if we were to exclude the games that he missed, it's not as if like they're even meeting expectations by many people's standards. And so there has to be an understanding of what reality is. And if that means us getting the 8th seed and getting out in the first round, or even if that means us missing the playoffs, there has to be an understanding of what needs to change moving forward, so we don't go into next year saying, oh, let's just put a whole bunch of ball handlers around LeBron. Very rarely any of them can shoot, especially from the free throw line, and we'll just BS our way to the playoffs because we have LeBron on our roster. Like it's just the whole approach to the season, to me, just felt like a waste of time.
And with his thing about playoff intensity or whatever, it's almost like you go and play pickup and there's that one guy that's just better than everybody else, but he's just chilling. And then his team's down like 6 points and it's game point. And he's like, all right, I'm going to start trying now. And then he still loses, but after the game, he lets everybody know that he was just chilling. He wasn't even trying.
That's what's going to happen. That's exactly what's about to happen.
Like it's just, and it's not a secret, right? Like, especially the last couple of years, defensively, whatever. Some stat last year came out that LeBron, takes up, or covers the least amount of ground or something of players that play as many minutes. I don't know, some weird stat like that. Yeah. But basically, people know that he's been chilling a little bit and doesn't play as hard in the regular season and doesn't really go for MVPs like he used to, stuff like that, and just saves himself basically for the 16 to 24 game stretch that is the playoffs, and for him getting to the finals. But yeah, there is a level of arrogance there that I guess you could make the argument he's earned the right to, but at the same time, like, I would be irritated if I was you as well, because it's not like this team was first or second seed the whole year and was on pace to win 50, 55 games, and he was chilling when that was happening. It's like, all right, when we were 540 games into the season, maybe you should have recognized then that you chilling in the West is not going to work. Like, why are we doing this 25 games out when it's a realistic possibility that it might not happen? Like, you might not make the playoffs. No, maybe that's because he just knows that his body can't hold up for that long, and that's why he was just waiting until then. But it didn't need to be said. Like, you already know that if over the next four weeks, you know, the Lakers go 15-5 and LeBron's averaging 38-9, ESPN's going to cover that, and they're going to say, oh, he's turned it on. He doesn't need to tell anybody. Like, we're going to know. And it's just irritating, like you said, that he just came out and was like, oh, you know, I hadn't been trying, but now that things are dangerous, I'm going to turn it on. Like, what does that say to his teammates? Are they allowed to just chill as well? Yeah, like, is Rondo's not young, coming off of a knee injury a couple years ago. Is he allowed to just chill for most of the season? Like, I don't understand that mindset.
I don't understand it either. And I don't know. And it's just weird to me to just publicly state that. And I agree with you. He's earned that right. The same way that he's earned the right for me to just blindly have this faith in him being able to lead a team into the postseason. Because, I mean, just being honest, I gave that same level of faith in Kobe. I remember very vividly in 2011 when they got swept by the Mavericks, and every single game that they were losing, I was like, man, Kobe's going to – we're not going to – it went from – We'll come back from being down 0-1 and 0-2, and then we were down 0-3, and I was like, Kobe's going to win one game at least. And it's just like the blind faith is there, and you earn that right. But the idea of just coming out, and what's even funny is, again, you're right. He's like ESPN and even Twitter right now. You know, on Twitter, there are mostly people who are just like, these are the records of the teams that LeBron has been on post All-Star break. So, like, people are already kind of projecting that there's going to be another level of intensity from LeBron. For you to come out and say, man, I really wasn't trying, but now I gotta really get in my bag. Like, it's like, man, calm down, LeBron. Like, and for me, it sets everything up for failure if it doesn't happen. Right. That's what it does. It just sets everything up, and it's like just building blocks on this shaky structure. And if everything doesn't work out, everything topples over, and then everyone is going to look like a fool. And I don't care what anybody says. And LeBron, I'm gonna have to give some blame to LeBron, because that would just be crazy if they don't make the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a realistic possibility. Something that a couple of people were talking about in chat, I didn't get a chance to see whose name it was that brought it up. But for me, I'm hoping that the Lakers somehow end up with the 7, whether that means that the Kings don't make it and the Spurs are the 8, or the Spurs drop out and the Kings and Lakers both make it, whoever. Because I think the Lakers, if it turns out that the Nuggets are the 2 seed, I think that's a team that the Lakers can beat. And it's not that the Nuggets aren't good. It's just that I think
it's LeBron.
It's LeBron. And also, like, for the Nuggets, there's other things. People are saying this in chat as well. I think that they're a team that you could potentially game plan out of a playoff series. Like, they're not that playoff tested. They're relying on a lot of young guys. Jokic is someone that's definitely improved defensively, but I feel like is someone that you could expose and is obviously such a big part of their game offensively. But they got to get there. And I don't know how confident I am that they're going to get there. And the other part of this is, where are you on the Lakers need a new head coach conversation, whether it's this year or next year?
To me, it's a next year thing. Firing a head coach with 25 games left, that sounds crazy to do it to begin with.
As crazy as firing your coach a year after making the finals, like David.
Yeah, and then Tyronn Lue still finished that season with a worse record than David Blatt. Yeah. Right. I don't like. Yeah, we're at a point where it's kind of too late. I don't think Luke Walton is that bad of a coach.
I don't either. I don't think he's the problem. No.
Yeah, I don't think he's the problem at all. I think offensively they struggle largely because of the personnel and the lack of spacing around them. And Luke Walton can't go out on the floor and make free throws for everybody, and shoot threes for everybody. Like that has nothing to do with him. And then defensively, over the last 2 years, they've been a top 12 to 11 defense in the NBA, and that's with them. With him coaching young players, which is something is almost unheard of at this point, especially when you're dealing with players who are still trying to find themselves and try to find some type of identity. Brandon Ingram has developed into a solid ball handler and defender under Luke Walton. Julius Randle last year, Julius Randle last year, basically in the second half of the season, was putting up the same numbers that he's doing right now. And Zubac, before they traded him, he was improving as well. And also Kyle Kuzma. I don't want to forget about him. So it's not like the young players aren't improving. It's not like he hasn't had a style of play that's been working for them, which is on the defensive end. And it's not like the team doesn't even have an identity offensively, which is up and down pace, high tempo. And to me, if they were to surround these players with shooters, that would make all of the difference, because there's no way that you're going to have a competent offense in today's NBA without the right shooters around you, especially now when you have LeBron. So to me, the problem isn't Luke Walton. Granted, he's going to get fired. I already know that for a fact. I mean, it's kind of inevitable. And it's almost to a point where I don't necessarily know who they're going to get to replace him, but they're just going to fire him just so they can say they fired him. But
I saw the odds the other day. And it's, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I follow odds and these kinds of things just because it can kind of give you an indication of where things are going. Like right before Kawhi got traded to the Raptors, like 3 days before he got traded, the Raptors were like the fifth best odds to trade for him. And then within 24 hours, they were the favorites. So I just look at those kinds of things, trying to, I don't know what kind of insider information they have, but it's scary how accurate they are sometimes. And Jason Kidd was the favorite to be the Lakers.
Oh, that would be horrible. That would be horrible. If y'all think that the Lakers offense is bad now, oh my God. The Lakers offense will be horrific. And I love Mark Jackson, but right. I don't think Mark Jackson
was on there too. He was like third or fourth.
I don't think Mark Jackson's offense was all that great either. It was very stagnant, very predictable. I think that's the greatest part of Steve Kerr and what he's brought to that team is a developed offense that they've been able to flourish off of over the past handful of seasons. But Jason Kidd, Jesus Christ, we will be taking huge steps back if he was our offensive coordinator or being right. Someone who's going to implement offense.
I don't understand that. Like Coach Bud is obviously a very good coach, but how do we not see the improvement from that team to being, they should have beat the Celtics in the first round last year, but they were, I don't remember the seeds. They were like 6 or 7 maybe. And then to go this year to being, one of the best records in the league. And statistically, they have a lot of stats to show that they are, one of the better teams from like a net rating standpoint that we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years. And they added some personnel. Giannis got a little bit better, but really the big addition by subtraction was getting rid of Jason Kidd and hiring Coach Bud.
And all of that in one season time. Like you said, Brook Lopez, he good. Like I applaud.
I'm sure
Brook
y'all would
Lopez.
love to have him right now.
Oh yeah, I would definitely want to have Brook Lopez. Like I applaud Brook Lopez, but that's definitely and Giannis improved as well. But that's definitely allowing a system to be put in there and put in place and grow off of that. But also I'll give them credit in the sense of over the course of the last 5 years, they were trying to figure out what type of style of offense they wanted to run or what type of team they wanted to be. First, it was kind of up tempo. Then they wanted a length. Then they wanted to be more defensive oriented. And then they kind of just settled on, all right, Larry Sanders and Jabari Parker really weren't working out for us. So we're just going to focus on 3-point shooting around Giannis. And so I give them credit in those regards as well. And I think that's where the Lakers are struggling, where it's been like, we're going to go young, and then now we're kind of going, okay, we need to win right now. And now it's like, we're going to put ball handlers, but we really need some shooters, so we're going to trade away some of our young players to get shooters right now that we probably could have picked up in the offseason. Like all of those things, granted, are trial and error, but they have to kind of make up their mind on what they want to be, which is also going to aid them on the coach that they're going to select to replace Luke Walton. But in short, though, I don't think Luke Walton is a problem. I just feel like the team wasn't put together accordingly, and I think they made mistakes along the way, and that's just a sign of a rookie general manager and executive with Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka. So all of those things make sense, but it's just like these are things that you have to acknowledge. You just can't say, "Oh, it's Luke Walton's fault," and kind of move forward and not expect to make the same mistakes if you don't accept what you've done wrong. So right. I don't know, but I'm afraid though we probably gonna miss it.
I don't know. It's one of those things that it's kind of strange to me how much this team – there's two things. One, how much this team is kind of like relying on Lonzo Ball. There's no really update on his injury timetable. Hopefully it comes back soon for their sake. But also I remember preseason, early season, they played the Warriors in the preseason. These dudes were flying up and down – they were throwing the ball out of bounds every other possession, but they were flying up and down the floor in terms of pace. And I understand that's not all that sustainable for 82 games, but – like they play at such a slower pace now, I feel like, obviously, than they did then for various reasons. But it's like you said, it's like they had this grand plan that somehow Magic and Rob Pelinka thought that they had some big solution to LeBron's career that nobody else had thought of, and they were going to put all these ball handlers around him and play at the super fast pace, and almost immediately realized it wasn't going to work. And then at the trade deadline, obviously tried to revert back to the shooting specialists around LeBron that, like you said, they could have just signed in the offseason. But we're actually going to move on to something that I didn't actually plan on talking about, but a lot of people are talking about it in chat, and that's just kind of the MVP race, where we're at on potential MVPs moving forward now, obviously, with the season going another 25 games or so past the All-Star break. And to me, the three names are basically James Harden, Giannis, and Paul George, weirdly. And for the longest time, like throughout this whole James Harden thing, I was like, this dude's the MVP. Like, there's no way he's going to average, and I know this is a very Russell Westbrook argument, so there's no way he's going to average 37 a game and not be the MVP, especially when once he started to turn it on, the team turned around their record. And like, I was at the point where I didn't even want Chris Paul to come back. I was like, I just want James Harden. Like, I wanted them to trade Chris Paul for like three dudes that could shoot and just roll with it. I knew that wasn't realistic, but selfishly, like, I wanted to just watch James Harden try and score 60 every night, because I was one of those people that was actually fairly entertained by it. But now, like, one, I'm kind of over it. Two, it's not as good. Like, he's not as efficient as he was during that really hot stretch. And I think people, I don't have the odds in front of me, but I think people are starting to sour a little bit on the James Harden is MVP conversation, especially when the guy that's in second place, even if you have Harden at one, I feel like most people have Giannis at two, and they have, from a team success standpoint, he definitely has a better case than James Harden. And Paul George is the third one, who I think people were kind of just putting in there just to have people recognize, hey, I watch the NBA all the time. I know that Paul George is playing at a near MVP level, but I don't think he's realistically going to get any votes. Not that he hasn't been playing outstanding, and he's probably going to be first team All NBA. It's just, I don't think he has as compelling of a case as those first two guys. Where are you at on the I'm over the James Harden thing, or you're still, rolling with him as your MVP frontrunner?
Well, to be honest with you, there was like a week where I was like, oh man, James Harden, wow, that could be a legit thing. But I've never really wavered too hard off of the idea that Giannis should be the MVP, because I mean, it's a terrible argument, but I mean, I guess this is how many voters determine who they're going to vote for when it comes to MVPs, and it's like a checklist of things that they kind of just check off. And if you kind of just look at historically speaking, Giannis tends to check off all of the boxes off the checklist. And so the thing with Harden is that A, he's already won an MVP, so there may be some voter fatigue. B, I think people are fully aware of the style of play that he's, and I mean, to his credit, I mean, he kind of has been forced to been put in a situation because, again, due to the injuries, but the style of play obviously is going to benefit him statistically. And C, I think there was a certain level of expectations that have definitely dropped a little bit due to injuries, but there's expectations for that team to be good before the season began. However, and this is kind of where the Paul George argument kind of sets in, where no one really wasn't expecting Paul George to be this great this late into the season, especially with Russell Westbrook on his team. And so I think that's what's catching people by surprise. But I think when it comes to Giannis, statistically, he's been great. He's impactful on both ends of the floor. He's leading a team whose second best player is Chris Middleton. And after that, it's who? Like Malcolm Brogdon or Brook Lopez? Or maybe you can say it's Coach Bud. But like, you kind of get what I'm saying. Like, it's talent, but it's very specific talent that's catered around a style of play that is dependent on what Giannis does on a night-to-night basis. And then when it comes to expectations, there are people who are saying that Milwaukee Bucks team might not even be a top 5 or 6 team in the Eastern Conference. The fact that they're one of the best teams in the entire league, I mean, all the boxes gets checked off. And I think the reason why Giannis sometimes gets lost in the conversation is because people don't do the whole, the ESPN stats or the Wilt Chamberlain stats. Like, Giannis is the first player since, XYZ player. But Giannis is having one of those seasons as well. He's averaging like 27, 12, and 6. Like, it's just ridiculous. And his shooting efficiency is on par with Steph Curry if you're removing free throw percentage. So to me, it's Giannis. But Harden, I mean, I'm not really over it because I'm still enamored. Even when he shoots like 3 for 13, I'm just enamored of how like the balls that you have to just keep chucking threes. Like it's just amazing to me. Like he's like contestant. He's like, I don't really give a damn because no one is going to say no to me at this point. Like we're too far into this for someone like if D'Antoni can't come in and be like, you got to pass the ball. Like that's not about to happen. So it doesn't matter.
Right. And I had Giannis as the MVP before the season, and I'm not saying that I was the only one. It's obviously a very popular pick. And I feel like if like the players were voting right now, they would probably pick Giannis because there's, some reports that have come out that players are not really all that excited about the way James Harden plays. And the weirdest thing for me was watching just like the All-Star events, the All-Star game specifically. It's not that James Harden didn't belong, like with, when KD and Bron and Giannis were on the floor. It's just, it seemed like his usual tricks wouldn't work as well. So he just chucked as many threes as possible. And it was just a very weird vibe. It was like nobody really respected him as, someone that could be a back-to-back MVP. Nobody really, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it was like he should have been a bigger deal in the All-Star game than he was, both in where he was selected as well as kind of how he was being treated during the game, how much attention he was being given offensively. And it's almost like all these, not all of them, but a lot of these guys view him as like a joke, and like his tricks and his ability to get to the free throw line and just chuck up threes are his game more than being a really good basketball player, like apparently they view Giannis.
I don't know. I didn't get that vibe, but I think the vibe that I am getting is that, like you alluded to earlier, is like in the last 15 to 20 games or so, it just kind of feels like the efficiency is kind of wavering. And because that entire like organization is based off of efficiency and how to score the most points within the fewest amount of shots type of organization, and the fact that Harden will have like those games where he shoots like 1 for 17 from behind the arc and then they lose to the Orlando Magic by 3 points, it kind of sticks out more so than the 44-point games that consistently happen on a night-to-night basis. And so Harden plays like this dangerous game where he could end the night shooting like, I can't remember the shooting split. Like one of the nights is he ends the night shooting 6 for 17 from behind the arc. Technically speaking, that's a solid shooting night from behind the arc because that's 35% from 3. But like you get to a point where it's like, hey, you just chucking. And like if you miss one of those threes and you go 5 for 17, all of a sudden you go from like 35% to like maybe like 30 or 29. So like I think that's where people are at right now, where they're kind of like noticing like, oh man, you're really just chucking, and sometimes you're not that efficient at all. And for your whole identity and that team's identity of being efficient, if that's not what you're bringing to the table on a night-to-night basis, and you're not the same defender as PG and Paul George, I said PG and Paul George, PG and Giannis, and your team doesn't have as many wins as they do, and you're turning the ball over like 5 times a game, I think that's why more people are starting to focus on some of the negative aspects of Harden's game rather than just being impressed. But I'm impressed. I'm impressed by all 3 of them, to be honest with you.
Right. And I think we're on the same page. I don't know if I would vote for Giannis as MVP, like if the vote took place today, but I do think by the end of the season, he is going to end up being the MVP, and deservingly so. And all 3 of those guys are deserving in terms of the seasons that they've put forth. But
not Paul George. He's not that deserving. He's been great.
In a different season, he might have been. Yeah.
He's not that deserving. I mean, he's playing great. Shout out to PG, but let's be honest, he's not.
Right. He is kind of just like like I said, hey, I watch the NBA a lot. I want you to know that I've seen that Paul George is playing at a high level, and I'm going to put him in the MVP conversation. But
I thought that was going to be Jokic this year. I thought people were like they're going to be like snot nose.
Want to let them know how much they really pay attention. I'm not some casual. I'm league pass everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I got alert set for every game. Yeah, that people really want you to know. There are some people like that.
Exactly. That's what I thought. That's why I had him as my dark horse. I was like, yeah, some elitists are going to be like, but what about Jokic? Like that's what they were going to do.
Jokic, I mean, he might be first team All NBA, him or Embiid, but yeah, I don't think he's necessarily in the MVP conversation.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this real quick because you brought it up. Is LeBron going to make the second team All NBA? Because you just said Jokic is going to be first team.
He's got to beat one of. I mean, they do 2 forwards and a center, right? For All NBA, it's different.
No, they just do front courts. I thought they just did front court.
If they just do front court, then yeah, he's probably second. If they do 2 forwards and a center, then he's got to beat one of Giannis, Paul George, Kawhi, or KD to be on the second team. I think he's probably gonna make third. If it's I could be remembering incorrectly. Maybe someone in chat can look it up, but I'm pretty sure it's 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center. And all-star is just front court and back court. And if that's the case, LeBron's probably third team All-NBA behind PG, Kawhi, KD, and Giannis.
Okay. I think we're in agreement on that.
Yeah. And, I don't think that there's any way that he could be completely out of it, obviously. But, if he lights it up the rest of the year and, Kawhi maybe misses some more games, he could potentially be second. But, yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page there. But we're going to go from the top of the NBA to not necessarily the bottom, but pretty near the bottom, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. And this is a team that you actually wanted to talk about the first time you came on the pod, but we ran out of time. And it's kind of a weird time to be talking about them because they're very much in tank mode, but it's one of those weird teams, a little bit like the Bulls last year, that are intentionally trying to tank, but can't really help but win either, especially since John Collins has come back. They've beaten the Lakers, obviously. They've beaten the Thunder. They've played some teams really, really well. And I don't know. It's a team that is interesting to talk about despite the fact that they're tanking. What are your thoughts on, I guess, their big three? It's probably one of the more overused phrases we have, but I guess Trae Young, Herter, and then John Collins, and then maybe Amari Spellman in there as well.
I was going to ask you who was the third. The fact that you brought up Herter is that's hilarious. I don't know. The only thing I really wanted to talk about him is, well, 2 things. A, I don't think John Collins is as good as like what many people are making him out to be. Not saying he's bad, but I just like everyone keeps saying it like, oh my God, like wow, John Collins is XYZ, and I hear people like they'll throw in. I've seen the
right, yeah, he's Amari Stoudemire. You didn't know?
Yeah, I've heard like that argument, or like how I've like just ridiculous stuff like they're trying to build the new Golden State Warriors there with Steph being Trae Young and Kevin Herter being Klay Thompson and stuff like that. But like John Collins, who I like, and I kind of noticed him and Taurean Prince over the past 2 years. And no one is really talking about Taurean Prince, who's also having a really good season. And I think a huge reason why defensively they've been somewhat consistent, or at least they've had an answer for some of their matchups. But I don't think that John Collins is as good as what people think, largely just because a lot of what Collins does has a lot to do with everyone else and their movement and how they structure their offense and the willingness of Trae Young to shoot. Like if Trae Young isn't shooting, which sometimes he does, which is kind of scary, John Collins struggles to kind of get open, and he's not like the greatest shot creator. It's very similar like what Siakam is doing in Toronto, where if you actually watch Siakam has like 2 or 3 moves, and that's it. Granted, he scores on those 2 or 3 moves, and he's had great success with the spin move and then the floater and the attacks to the basket and stuff like that, and obviously the spot up 3. But like if you can stop him from doing that, which isn't that hard to do if you actually focus on him, then he's not going to be that successful. It's very similar with Collins. Throw a lob up there. He has somewhat of a post game where he kind of gets really quick to the baseline. He tries to spin and stuff like that. Things that I love about him because he's obviously adding to his game, but he's just not that good. And I think a huge reason for it is not just because of, they're on a bad team and most players don't really care that they're matching up against the Hawks, but also everything that he does is kind of dependent on other players also being able to shoot or their willingness to shoot. And I've kind of watched it, and it's like, John Collins is nice, but like you said, when people say Amari Stoudemire, it's like, oh man, that's a stretch.
Right. And he's another one of those guys, and I said this in a video that he's listed at 6'10", but he's one of those guys that he's listed at 6'10" because of his position. Like he's not actually 6'10". He's one of those guys. He's probably like 6'8", and he's a really good athlete, but I just don't see his long-term fit. I think his long-term fit is at the 5, and defensively he's never going to be an above average player at that position. So can you really slot him into whatever future team the Hawks are going to end up having? I'm not as high on him as some other people are. Where are you on the Trae Young development through, what are we at, 60 games of the season?
Trae Young is – his three-point shooting is going to take a while. I'm happy, though, that he's shooting around 80% from the free throw line, which tends to show signs that he's going to be a good 3-point shooter at some point in his career. And also like the fact that if the 3-point shot isn't there, he's just not forcing it like he did earlier in the season. He's now taking other shots. Sometimes settles for mid range, but obviously he hasn't built up enough body weight to kind of really go out and attack the basket and try to draw the fouls. The one thing though that I am like massively surprised by is like he is an amazing ball handler and passer. Like some of the stuff that he does, I'm like, whoa, like he'll throw the ball out in front of him, kind of frees the defense and then passes it between people's leg, or like really he does passes and dribble moves that really impress me, to the point where it's like, why were y'all comparing him to Curry before the season, before like his career began? Like he has some Curry tendencies, but he's a way better passer, in my opinion, or at least at this stage of his career, than Curry was. And that's the thing that really just kind of blows me away. And so if he's able to like shoot, and he doesn't have to be like Curry level shooting, but if he can shoot and pass like that and dribble and initiate the offense, I don't know. I'm not saying he's as good as Luka, but I can see why they trade for him. I'll say that.
Right. And it seems like they're going to get the pick. Like the Mavs are exactly where they didn't want to be after they made the trade in terms of in the standings. They're not going to probably be bad enough to get a top 5 pick unless they get some good lottery odds, and they're also not competing for the playoffs at the moment. So it's not just Luka for Trey straight up. They're probably going to get the Mavs first round pick, maybe even top 10. And yeah, I'm with you. As Funky put it in the first podcast episode that I did, anybody that was paying attention knew that Trae Young was a really good passer in college. And my big hiccup with him in terms of evaluating him for the draft was just consistency. Like you would see him like 2 or 3 or 4 times a game make a pass or make a play that nobody else in college was making. But then other times he would just kind of look a little bit lost and almost like he didn't belong offensively, especially if his shot wasn't falling, and obviously being as small and as skinny as he is. So it's definitely going to be a developmental process. And as a lot of people in chat, I'm sure know, I'm a huge Luka Doncic guy, but I kind of see what you're saying. It's not – Trae Young has not been a bad rookie. Trae Young's been an above-average rookie. It's just having to compare him to Luka might bring down his reputation of his rookie year a little bit. But you also have to consider the pick, and it could end up being a pretty valuable one, albeit in a draft class that drops off pretty significantly outside of the top 5.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I remember, I think I watched like 1 or 2 games in college, and the 2 games I watched of him, they were probably bad examples. Like I was watching the same. I was like, man, I don't get the Curry representation outside of like him chucking up some shots. But like there was definitely moments where he was like kind of just coming off of screens and then didn't necessarily know what to do after that, which was kind of was like, oh, I don't know why is he like hesitating right there? He should continue to attack, which is the reason why I was saying before he got into the NBA was like if he's put around the right pieces, he'll do fine. But if not, then it's going to be a problem. But yeah, I agree. Because of the Luka Doncic trade, that's the reason why people won't be like, he would have to be like the next Steph Curry for people to say, okay, he's actually really good. But until then, yeah, it's just not going to pan out for him, unfortunately.
Like, I know that we all want it so bad because Steph he's not old, but like we probably have 5 years of good Steph left. We're not getting another one. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not going to happen. We're not getting another Steph Curry. I know that like there could be a guy that ends up being 80% of him in terms of his ability to shoot on and off the ball, his creativity, all that. There's not going to be another person that can shoot 50% from the logo, from pulling up from 3. Like it's just not going to happen. There's something wrong with this man in terms of how he can shoot the ball. And I know that we all want another Steph Curry so bad, and it's going to be a comparison that's going to continue to be made if a guy can shoot really well off the dribble and is a good playmaker. But I don't think that we're ever going to see another one. I know that that's a bold statement to make because there's going to be many, 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 many years of NBA basketball to come, but I think he's one of a kind.
I agree with you. He hasn't. I didn't really recognize it until.
Right. I'm not blaming you for using that as a phrase. Like I'm not saying that you thought that Trae was going to be the next step. It's just a phrase that we continually use, but I don't think like it's just not realistic.
And it should be stopped. People should stop using it. Like I 100% agree with you because like I don't really recognize it until like you actually sit down and look at it. But like Steph hasn't had a season in which he shot below 40% from behind the arc.
It takes like ridiculous shots. Like it's nuts. Like the efficiency on the difficulty of shot is out of this world. It's insane.
Yeah, so I agree with you. That whole like he's going to be the next Curry, or when the 7 foot foreigner who can shoot, he's going to be the next Dirk. Like
I
that. Those,
hate that. It gets
yeah,
on my last. There's like I put out a video. It was something about like the most overused phrase, and I think like in the NBA community, I think I used young core for that. There's other ones. There's big three. There's bust. There's the next dot dot dot. But I have a video coming up talking about just looking back at the 2015 NBA draft, looking at some evaluations from NBADraft.net, I think it was. And yeah, it's just crazy how like Justice Winslow, because he's left-handed, kind of 6'5", a bit of a playmaker. He's James Harden, and it's like Porzingis was like you can't compare a white international player to someone that's not a white international player in the league right now. You can't compare a left-handed guy to someone that's not left-handed. Like you said, if someone comes in and they're 7 feet tall and they can shoot, they're the next Dirk. I saw some stupid thing on Twitter the other day that said one of Thonmaker's cousins is like a 7-foot Magic Johnson. Like, what are we even talking about? Like, there's a point that we reach. Like, this is something that kind of gets my nerves a little bit on YouTube, as people are like, oh, you just put this in the title to get people to watch the video. This is clickbait. We all want people to watch our videos. Okay. Stop blaming us for trying to get people to watch this. Like, we all want people to watch it. We make the content to share with people, but there's that. And then there's a line that you cross when you say, this guy is going to be a Magic Johnson that's 7 feet tall. And we get so much into hyperbole as opposed to actual evaluation, but that's just my rant on it.
Oh, I definitely agree. There's definitely some hyperbole being used on YouTube.
Right. It just 7-foot Magic. It kills me, man. Like looking at the draft fight, because it's so consistent. Like if there's a left-handed international player coming into the league, he's Manu Ginobili. Like if a guy can shoot and he's international player, he's Andrea Bargnani, or post player, he's Pau Gasol. It drives me nuts sometimes. But we're gonna move on to the last section, and that is just a very brief discussion on who you potentially see as a more than likely, very unlikely team to challenge the Golden State Warriors, whether it be in the West or in the East, in the NBA Finals, Western Conference Finals, whatever it may be. A team that you see, you can rank them if you want to. It doesn't matter to me, as a team that could possibly end up challenging them. I won't put you on the spot and say, yes, they're going to beat them, but could at least give them a 6 or 7 game series. In the West, for me, a team that I'm starting to kind of warm up to, and I didn't really expect this, but it's OKC. Just because I think they're kind of zigging and zagging enough to be different than most other teams that the Warriors are going to have to end up playing. And they're so good defensively and can slow the game down and really make it kind of a grinded out game that along with, they have a lot of talent. They have some defensive versatility, could end up giving the Warriors problems if they shoot well enough in the series to keep them in the game and not get completely blown out just because of the 3s versus 2s trade-off. That would be my team in the West, and I guess we'll begin there, and then we'll move on to potentially a team in the finals from the Eastern Conference.
To be honest with you, I don't think there is a team in the West. If I had to pick one, it would have to be OKC as well. But I'm going to sound like a hater when I say this, but I'm just a firm believer that Westbrook could just shoot anybody, any team out of a series.
Go ahead. I was getting there.
Yeah, I just feel like he could really just shoot any team out of a series. And I'm not even like saying that to try to be like mean or anything like that, but I can easily see that being their demise, regardless of how great Paul George plays. And you talked about shooting. It's funny because as much as like people love to talk about Roberson, there's a huge possibility because Roberson hasn't been there. That's the reason why offensively they've been able to stay stable, because despite the fact that, yes, he brings defense to the table, they've still been a really great defensive team. And because he's not there, their spacing has been way better. But if they catch on fire and there's a couple of games where Clay or KD struggles and it's kind of like Curry just trying to have something going, or especially because now Draymond is just horrible from spacing out the floor himself, I can see them kind of pushing 2 games out of that series. But I just got to see it. I got to see it.
The scary thing for me, I'm obviously not a Thunder fan, but the scary thing for me, whether you're a Thunder fan, a Thunder hater, whatever, is let's just say, however unlikely it is, let's just say somehow the Thunder steal game 2 on the road and then they win both their home games. The Warriors win, and then we're going into game 6. It's in Oklahoma City. The Thunder are up 3-2. They need to win 1 game, and Westbrook goes like 4 for 20 from the field. Like, that's a realistic possibility. Like, whether they need 1 game to stay in the series, whether they need 1 game to finish it off, if that's a scenario that ends up coming up, That's the thing that scares me the most about any kind of possibility that Thunder would beat the Warriors or really succeed at all in the postseason, is just the fact that there's always a looming possibility that Russell Westbrook is going to stand up and be like, I got this. We're going to win this game. I'm going to shoot like 12 threes. I'm going to shoot some mid-range pull-ups. I'm going to get to the free throw line, and we're going to lose this game. Like, that would be my big concern. So what about the East? Any team that you're looking at potentially your favorite in the East? Maybe not even your favorite to get to the finals. Maybe a team that you think matches up the best against Golden State in a 7-game series from the East.
I'm going to go Toronto. I think, especially if Lowry, I don't know why, but I have more faith in Lowry shooting well from the field than Westbrook, despite the fact he struggles in the postseason as well. But to me, Toronto has like everything that you could possibly want from a team to match up well against the Golden State Warriors. They have an answer. Not like, I don't. Let me say this first. When I say answer, I'm definitely not saying they're going to like lock up these players, but they have an answer, someone who could defend DeMarcus Cousins and Marc Gasol. They have someone who can switch back and forth, or two players really who can switch back and forth on KD with Kawhi and Danny Green. Whoever's not guarding Kevin Durant can be guarding Clay. Kyle Lowry can help out on Clay as well, and they can switch back and forth between him and Steph Curry. And especially if you want to put a taller defender on Curry, you can put Danny Green on him, and then you can have Siakam kind of playing that kind of, I don't want to say free safety because I don't want to. I feel like Draymond is intelligent enough not to get caught, especially in the finals, just hanging around the three-point line when he's not making the shots. But, he can kind of play that free safety, roam around, since Draymond may not be making all his shots type of a role, and really be the type of player that could push them over the top. And then their bench is really good. I think Nick Nurse is a quality coach. So I think that's the best team that matches up well with them. All the other teams in the East, I feel like have like a noticeable flaw in their system that wouldn't put them in a favorable situation. And I'll even go as far as saying this: if there is a team that would beat this Warriors team within the last like 4 or 5 years, I think obviously the Cavs in 2016, but I think that this Toronto team would be that team.
Right. My big issue, and I've talked about this on the pod before, is Kyle Lowry is just not playing all that well since basically November. That would be a big concern for me. Still going to be a pretty good positive defensively. But if Kyle Lowry's not performing at like a near all-star level, then you're counting on Kawhi plus a lot of depth to potentially take down Golden State. And I'm with you. Like, there's concerns with every team, that being mine for Toronto. For Philadelphia, they just don't like each other. Like, I'm pretty confident Jimmy Butler is going to end up leaving. I don't think Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are really on great terms. And not that that's the end-all be-all for a team, but it just doesn't seem like a team that's going to be together enough, even though they're talented, to push through the adversity they're going to need to get through a 7-game series. And they're not all that deep. And they have a guy on the floor in their best starting lineup in JJ Redick that's going to be an issue defensively. The Celtics, similar story. They've got depth, but they kind of hate each other. I still don't know what to make of them. If Gordon Hayward can play like he did right before the All-Star break, then that could possibly be a positive. And they've played the Warriors relatively well in Brad Stevens' tenure, even since they've gotten Kevin Durant. And then who am I forgetting about? The Bucks. Even though Giannis is really good, I'm a little bit concerned about the Warriors' ability to just game plan Giannis, not out of a series, but certainly limit him in terms of his ability to get to the basket and forcing him to take more mid-rangers, more threes, and not get to the rim as much. So I'm with you on there kind of being a flaw with every team. If I had to rank how confident I am in a team actually beating the Warriors in a 7-game series or taking it to 6 or 7, I would probably go – honestly, the Bucks and Raptors for me are tied, then the Celtics, and then Philly. But my dark horse there would still be the Celtics again, just because I feel like they have depth, they have versatility. Kyrie, when he's playing against Steph, believes that he's the better player. He's shown that before in the finals, that he has this confidence against Steph that other guys just don't have. So that would be another team to look out for me.
I can't jump on the Celtics bandwagon no more. I'm kind of off that. It's until I see Gordon Hayward and Jaylen Brown play well while everybody else is playing well, and Kyrie's on the floor. Like, I have to see that entire team play well for a stretch of games before I can like confidently state, okay, that team can do it. Because that's really been the problem. They've had depth, but their depth hasn't played as well as they need to play for them to be considered one of the deeper teams in the Eastern Conference, let alone the entire league. But I'm going to stick with my pick. I think the Ben Simmons. I'm not even like I don't. I agree with. I don't think everyone in Philly likes each other, but like the Ben Simmons dynamic, his inability to shoot, I think that's going to hurt them. Same thing with Giannis in Milwaukee. And then again, I don't think that depth is as great as some people try to make it out to be in Boston. So I think it's Toronto. I think Toronto is the team and possibly the only team in the last 4 to 5 years outside of, again, the Cavs that have the ability to beat this team.
Right. And I feel like Kawhi, similar to Kyrie, has a lot of confidence against this Golden State team because that Spurs team probably could have beaten the Warriors the year that Zaza hurt his ankle. Yeah, the only other argument I'll make for you, I'm not trying to talk you into the Celtics. This is just something that keeps coming up in my mind, is their depth throughout the regular season has almost hurt them because there's so many guys that they feel like they have to give minutes to, that once the playoffs roll around, they can just kind of be like, all right, Terry Rozier, sit down at like the 7th guy on the bench like you were basically all of last year, and don't talk to us about trying to get in the game. We're going to play Marcus Smart like 25, 30 minutes. Kyrie's going to play like 35, and that's our guard rotation. And I feel like that's going to help them, is just the fact that they can shorten their rotation more than they can in the regular season. And ultimately, I think they're going to be a better team as a result. And again, I don't know. They just have this weird way. I know that they end up playing some teams really, really horribly and losing to teams that they shouldn't. But generally, they play well against really good teams, and the Warriors are included, obviously, in that. So that would just be kind of my hard sell on the Celtics potentially having a chance against the Warriors. But I think that is where we're going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Do you have anything, videos coming up, anything you want to let people know about before we wrap up?
Yeah, I should have a video out hopefully today. I'm in the middle of editing. Middle editing right now. So hopefully it'll come out today. Shout out to everybody in the chat, all 123, 25 people watching right now. Shout out to all you all participating in the chat. I see y'all out there. And thanks for having me on the podcast again, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, people, I don't think people realize, certainly my editing is not nearly what yours is, but I don't think people realize that that's like 75% of it. It gets on my nerves sometimes. I do not.
It's horrible. Oh my God.
At all. Don't like it whatsoever. Like I'm watching, like you'll watch like King of the Fourth Quarters videos and this man is just talking to the camera. I'm like, God.
I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there one day. I'm gonna get there one day.
I just looking at him like, man, I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the interaction.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, this man just talked in front of the camera. That sounds nice. But yeah, like you said, maybe we'll get there someday. But like you said, I appreciate everybody watching, everybody listening, everybody in chat. I appreciate you guys coming out. I appreciate you being on the pod. And yeah, I will see all you guys next time.